I was born and raised in Goshen, Indiana. My dad was a preacher. We lived in Michigan. We lived in Chicago and then ended up out in the Los Angeles area. And so I got to spend a lot of time in some really cool baseball parks. Old Tiger Stadium, Old Comiskey Park, Dodger Stadium. That's where I cut my teeth growing up. My childhood passion was Mork and Mindy. The Brady Bunch, actually. Baseball, the Detroit Tigers growing up was my biggest passion, I think, as a kid, just watching those games. One of my favorite memories was coming home after school one day, watching the first game of a doubleheader on the black and white TV in our family room. My dad walked in, he saw me watching the game, and he said, "What do you say we go to the second game?" I was like, "Well, yeah." And literally 45 minutes later, we're walking into Old Tiger Stadium. And so I go from a little 12-inch black and white TV to full color in person less than an hour later. And that was a great memory of mine in that old ballpark. So as a kid, I took piano lessons and got pretty good at it. And in the mid-'80s, an old gospel singer discovered me as a piano player at a church and hired me to go out on the road with them as their piano player. I ended up becoming the road manager, the booking agent, and toured with some old hippie gospel singers from most of the late 80s and early 90s. And then a family came along, kids came along, and I had to get a real job. And I had a lot of interest in high school in law enforcement. And I discovered an opportunity out in the Seattle, Washington area and tested with a police agency out there, a little town called Gig Harbor, Washington, and hired on with them as a police officer, where I worked for the late 90s and early 2000s as a police officer until I had an opportunity to get into the mortgage world. So I chose sales because, and having a commission type of an income and being my own boss was specifically so that I could be my own boss. I got real tired in my life of being subject to a time card, being subject to a salary, putting in extra hours to not make any extra income, not being able to control my destiny, not being able to control the good and the bad of where I ended up. And when I discovered working in the financial world, it was something I couldn't turn down, to be my own boss, run my own company, and be in charge of where I ended up. What changed from mortgages to insurance was I had a mortgage company that I ran from the early 2000s up until the Fannie Mae bond crash, July 31st of '08. And we did our best to keep all the lights on. And after a while, we had to shutter that business for a while. But I always remembered how much I loved it. Ended up going into private sales, leading the sales for a professional audio company for about 7 years. And then in 2017, I discovered the mortgage protection insurance world. Saw an online ad, and next thing you know, I ended up in a phone interview. And here I am, several years later. So what I like about this company, about being with this company, is they do what they say. They are committed to me 100%. If they tell me they're going to do something, they're going to do it. They don't mince words. They don't hide from the truth. And they hold me accountable to my promises. And so if they say, "Hey, here's the leads you have available. Here's what it's going to take to keep that lead flow going," we have a partnership. We have an agreement. We move forward. Here's what's going to take to get your policies issued. We have a partnership. We have an agreement. We move forward. I don't have to wake up the next day and go, "Oh, they changed the rules on me. Oh, they undid my business without me having any say." I appreciate the loyalty and the reliability and the consistency of what the company brings to me. So in late 2021, we moved from Washington State to Florida, and I moved my protection insurance business out here to Central Florida. And that was pretty scary because I had to shut down my client relationships out there and create new client relationships out here. And I consulted with several people in the industry, and I said, "Look, I'm going to need some resources when I get out there. Who should I latch onto? Who should I put my arm around, or so to speak, have them put their arm around me to make sure that when we get to Florida, I don't fall flat on my face?" To a person. Even people that had a financial interest in me going at different spots, they each said, "You got to go with UniTrust. You got to go with InsuraTec. You got to go with the company that's out there and the resources that they can provide and the support they can provide. And it was absolutely, hands down, the best decision. What I would tell somebody who's looking at our business for the first time is a couple things. One is, this is not a job. This is you starting your own business. You have to rely on yourself. Nobody's going to wake you up in the morning and say, okay, let's get to work. They might call you and say, where are you? Why weren't you on our conference call? But you have to be self-motivated. If you're looking at this like it's a job, that's not the mentality. You need to look like, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm starting my own business, and I am in charge of where I end up at the end of today. Today I wake up, in many respects, unemployed, but I'm going to go to bed tonight unemployed. But in the meantime, I can control everything about the results that I have in my back pocket by the time I get home tonight. So that's the first thing I would tell people. Secondly, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. The people that are before us in this business know what works and they know what doesn't work. Everything has been tried. Everything has been proven. The things that don't work have been proven to not work. The things that do work have been proven to work. So don't try to reinvent the wheel. Don't come in and say, well, yeah, but what about this? What about that? What I would tell people is, do what you're told, don't argue, and appreciate the fact that the people that are telling you that are saving you months and years of grief and a learning curve. So some of the things that have changed for me is, since when I started this business, is that when I came into this, I think I was making $5,700 a month, directing the sales for an audio company, traveling all around the country, working 60 to 70 hours a week, not being home more than about 10 to 14 days a week. Now I am in charge of my outcome. I clear 200 a year in revenue. I decide when I'm working. I decide when I'm not working. I do work more than I don't work, so let's not mince words on that. But the time that I spend, I'm efficient with it, and the output that I get from that, I know the output that I'm going to get. I know what the return is going to be. I know what results are going to be, and I'm not giving those results to anybody else but myself. So what's changed for my kids is they get to see a lot more of me. I can control when I see them. Been able to do things like provide both of my daughters spectacularly beautiful weddings, have little impromptu trips to places that we hadn't planned on before, and provide for them the support they need as they start their own lives. It's been wonderful to watch. So I've forged some great relationships and friends with people all around the country. In the company here, we've got friends up in Maryland. I've got people that work on my team all over the place. Texas, Maryland, Washington, you name it. And we may not see each other face to face, but every few months. But when we do, it's like we're best friends because of the time we spend on the phone and on online video chats, supporting each other and helping each other grow our businesses.